Hey folks, Craig Danger, Final Record Player. Oh, back again, and hey, today we're talking about 5 must-have. I'm not going to say they're all underrated, but a couple of them are. Absolutely. Stick around to the end for the killer underrated one. But we're talking about 5 records that are now 60 years old. We're talking about 5 records from 1965 that, hey, they should be in your collection. Or just hear them. Just listen to them on streaming. Woo! Beginning of the album era, really, in popular music, and wow, fantastic stuff. So, hey, do as you always might do. Pop yourself an adult beverage, and of course, whenever you're with Craig Danger, you'll need to buckle up. And we're back, of course. Hey, it's 2025. If maybe you're watching this in the future. Well, this is what it was like in 2025 with Craig Danger. Yes, everything echoed. No, actually, it didn't at all. Anyway, let's cut the preamble. Let's talk about some 60-year-old must-have records. Some of them underrated, but not this one. How about the Byrds, Mr. Tambourine Man from 1965? Woo! Obviously, classic record. If you know it, if you don't know it, you probably should. This, of course, is the Byrds' most popular record. Well, what's funny about the Byrds is they kind of get talked about along the same lines as the Beatles and the Stones and the Beach Boys. But you know what? This was kind of their biggest album. Went to about number 5. I think it was number 5 in the United States. Number 6, I think, in Britain. But you know what? This was their most popular album. And after this, it was all kind of downhill. Not in terms of artistic sort of power and really innovation, but in terms of sales, this was kind of their top, sort of their high mark. But you know what? I wouldn't say creatively it is, but this is a really, really good record. A lot of, again, their biggest selling record. And you know what? For the time, it was kind of seen as basically finally an American kind of pushback on the British invasion, which was happening at the time. Obviously, the Beatles had started lighting it up around, basically everywhere. And people were like, where's the American response? This is the American response. With all due respect to the Beach Boys, this was seen as kind of a big response. And you know what? All very good stuff. Kind of was the beginning of what journalists at the time would call folk rock. And of course, that Rickenbacker, that 12-string Rickenbacker sound. Of course, Jim McGuinn at the time later would become Roger McGuinn. But you know what? Great playing on this. Great record. Obviously, Gene Clark, a notable member. He was basically their songwriter for the first 18 months of the band's existence. And there's some originals on here. But also, yeah, some folk classics. Pete Seeger song. If you're somebody who watched A Complete Unknown as of recent, you might want to tune into this big dog of a record, which, by the way, I'm hearing conflicting things, but you know what? I thought that was a great documentary. I didn't know anything about Dylan's younger era, and I thought A Complete Unknown was, I thought it was great. I enjoyed the hell out of it. So sue me, purists, Bob Dylan. Anyway, that was a little bit of editorial that nobody expected. Back to the record. Let's, so basically this one has got obviously the title track. Obviously it also has the Bob Dylan song, I'd probably feel a whole lot better. But you know what? Cover to cover, this is a really good album. This is a band kind of finding their feet, I guess, and finding really a sound. A lot of people assumed that this was all made by the Wrecking Crew. In fact, it was not. The single, Mr. Tambourine, was mostly played by the Wrecking Crew, except, of course, Jim McGuinn on the 12-string Rickenbacker. But you know what? The rest of this album was all the Byrds. Even at that early juncture, they were kind of known as sort of a battle back and forth between them and the Buffalo Springfield in L.A. They were kind of known as maybe the not as good live band as Buffalo Springfield in terms of playing, but they did play all over this album. And again, this one it's at least worth a listen. If you haven't heard this one, by all means, you should. I think probably if you're looking to buy this, I haven't looked. I've had this record for 20 years. It's a beauty on the Columbia label, and you know what? It's a good one. It's a good one to have. I don't know that I would call this the best Byrds album, but for 1965, this was an absolute game changer. The Beatles loved this as well. They were like, "Oh, whoa, what's happening here?" It was very influential for them because of that, again, that 12-string Rickenbacker sound. But again, the Byrds, Mr. Tambourine Man, my first must-have of 1965. It's a cooker, really good record, and yeah, again, really, I think, fairly legendary. I'm not willing to say that it's underrated, but it definitely is a must-have. And again, I would invite you in the comments to let me know what's a good 60-year-old record that I'm missing here. Obviously, there's many, but I particularly would ask, what do you think is an underrated record from 1965? So that means is basically, does that mean, hey, don't mention Beatles records or the Rolling Stones? Yes, it does. That's what it means. So yeah, leave some in the comments. I would love to know your opinion. Let's get some discussion going on here, the Greg Danger channel. Number 2, we're going to escape into the jazz realm. Oh, danger goes jazz. Don't go jazz very often, admittedly. I do have a little bit of a jazz collection. I'm not a big enthusiast, but I do love the sound of jazz, certainly. And this one I think is kind of basically like a training wheels into jazz. This and sort of a kind of blue are seen as basically kind of gateways into jazz. And you know what? I agree. This is a recent pressing, as you see on the Blue Impulse, little blue vinyl on the Impulse re-release label. But yeah, this is kind of seen as sort of a classic record, and I was just listening to it this morning on the streaming. Really good, really kind of sort of tribal, really sort of sacred sounding. I love Supreme. And anyway, it's in terms of jazz, here's the thing about Coltrane. He's a little busy at times. Brother knows a note, but then he also is like, hey, how about another 38 notes? So it's something certainly to get used to. I think he's got an album around 61, 62 called My Favorite Things or something like that. That album I find much more listenable, much more of an easy listen. This one, like I say, is not a super, for somebody who's completely foreign to jazz, this is not, I don't think it's just a complete immediate entry point, but it is a great record. A lot of interesting piano bits on this. Obviously, Coltrane is fantastic on the saxophone, and this is kind of seen as his classic record. Released and recorded, I think, in 1965. Maybe not recorded in 65, but definitely released in 65. And yeah, this one sold by about 1970, and those are 1970 numbers. I'm sure it's sold many, many since, but this was about 500,000 copies by 70, and just to give you an idea, most of his albums sold like 30,000 copies. So this one is kind of, everyone sort of knows this one, but hey, and is it underrated? Oh, hell no. Hell no. Everybody knows it. If you know even like a sniff of jazz, you know about John Coltrane's I Love Supreme. But yeah, like I say, I've had this for 20 years on compact disc. I went and I bought it on vinyl. It's kind of a classic record. Certainly, again, if you're stepping into the realm of jazz, which is not an easy realm to step in. There's quicksand everywhere. Danger says, warning, quicksand. But you know what? Good stuff. John Coltrane, I Love Supreme from 1965. I would call this a classic. Must have. Is it underrated? Hell no. Hell no. This one's definitely rated. I wouldn't call it overrated, but it's rated. So yeah, good one to pick up. 60 years old this year. I Love Supreme. Yeah, so I got a really good underrated one coming up after this one, but you know what? Hey. Ooh, we gotta talk about People Get Ready. Curtis Mayfield and the Impressions. Oh, this is a really good album. I think it's Johnny Pate does the arrangements on this. Ooh, he's just a fantastic arranger through the whole Impressions area. And then I think he also arranged a lot of Curtis Mayfield stuff as well. Really, really good stuff. This, of course, is mostly Curtis Mayfield tracks on it. Of course, the original version of People Get Ready. Ooh, Aretha, again, that thief in the night. Aretha coming to try to steal this. I still got to say that this original version is still kind of the ultimate. Although, again, Aretha's continually knocking on it. I'm going to steal your song. I'm going to steal your song. I'm Aretha Franklin. Aretha, calm down. I mean, could you give a brother a song? Anyway, People Get Ready. Really great stuff. Really good album. I just listened to this also on the streaming this week. This is on the ABC label. Just a note and a little bit of a warning for those folks who grew up on compact discs. This album is, and almost every album in the ABC era of the Impressions. Hey man, you're lucky you're getting 30 minutes out of these discs. That's all I'm saying. These are fast albums. These are short tracks. But yeah, this is a really good album. Starts off with A Woman's Got Soul. My favorite bit about A Woman's Got Soul is it starts out with she ain't the best looking woman you ever did see. And I'm like, so he comes out, he's like, so my lady's kind of ugly, but hey, she's got soul. Hey, just don't sing that to your lady there. You can say it's about some other chick. Yeah, right? Anyway, but that aside, you know what? This is a really, really good album. Any of the Impression stuff from, if you can get these, and I think they're mostly original pressings. I'm not sure that the Impression stuff ever really kind of picked up. This stuff did chart very well. This was number 23 on the Billboard LPs chart. Of course, back then, we're talking 65. There was not a lot of incredible sales of albums. They were still kind of fledgling. It was still very much a singles market, but yeah, the Impressions, doing a doozy of a classic album. There's not really a bad track on here. Again, it's Curtis Mayfield. It is hard to find anything that's bad by him. But yeah, so people get ready. The Impressions from 1965, 60 years old, a must-have. I would dare to say. But again, 30 minutes is all you can get. Maybe it's about 28. I'm not sure what the playing time is. But any of the Impressions album that's there, really, really short. But to be fair, he did release usually about 2 every year. Starting at maybe 64, going up to like 70. So Curtis Mayfield and the Impressions, people get ready. And you want to talk about underrated? Who the hell? No one has this record. Everyone should have this record. Mitty Collier, Shades of a Genius from 65 on the Chess label. Wow. You know what? I don't even know. I think there was this was probably in the 90s. Yeah, aging myself, aging the old danger. But back in those days, I was into, those music magazines like Select and Mojo and Uncut. And I remember there was one magazine, and I'm not sure which one, it might have been Mojo, that was talking about the best soul albums of specific years, and they talked about 1965. They talked about Mitty Collier, Shades of a Genius. Anyway, I don't know how I ended up, I must have ordered it. I can't imagine I just popped into a record store at the time and was like, yes, you must have Mitty Collier's Shades of a Genius here, do you not, sir? No, I must have ordered it. Anyway, I don't know how I ended up with it. This is not available on streaming. However, you can, I believe there's a Mitty Collier Chess Years sort of compilation. Ooh, give that a listen. Talk about underrated vocalists. I would say he would even have more power than Etta James's At Last. So this is kind of like a 65 version. I think At Last was like 60, 61. But Mitty Collier, Shades of Genius. The classic track on this, of course, and sort of a big hit at the time, at least on the R&B charts, although she did have hits from 61 to 68, mostly again on the R&B chart, was I Had a Talk with My Man Last Night. Ooh, oh, killer track, beautiful piano on that one. And yeah, you know what? This whole album is really good, and she's just got this power of a voice. It's fantastic. Mitty, this would be her only album, actually, and she would release, like I say, up until 68. Then she got into gospel. Unfortunately, she had some vocal polyps and kind of lost her voice. But then later on, came back into gospel. Of course, I Had a Talk with My Man is based on a gospel song, as a lot of those early soul hits were. And yeah, Shades of a Genius, Mitty Collier from 65. If you see this, and I don't even know if you're going to see this, I have not seen this ever again. Like I say, this is a mystery to how I even got this one, although I'm sure I ordered it sometime in the early 2000s, late 90s. But Mitty Collier, Shades of Genius, I think easily a definite must-have, but super underrated, and I'm surprised nobody talks about this album. Obviously, the cover's like, we're not showing Mitty. We just got some circles and come on, chess art department, do better work, do better. They didn't, and as a result, Mitty sort of faded and disappeared without a trace. But she's still alive, actually. I was just checking on the Wikipedia. 83 years old, Mitty Collier. So here's to Mitty. Love you, Mitty. Love Shades of a Genius. Great album from 1965. And we'll end off this episode with 5 must-have, and in some cases, but not this one, underrated copies, 60-year-old records. Of course, Otis Blue. Otis Redding sings soul. I mean, if you watch the channel, you know that I've talked about this record before. This is Basically, I think there's 3 of 11 of the songs are Otis Redding penned. Most of these are covers, but ooh, talk about putting a stamp on all of these songs. As particularly of note are the Sam Cooke songs. Sam Cooke, of course, died only but a few months before this was actually recorded. Steve Cropper doing some of the production. I was reading how apparently this was kind of seen as Cropper's kind of coming out party as a producer, and I got to agree, the music on this is fantastic. But and again, we're talking about Otis Redding. We're talking about the voice, the sort of pleading vibe, Mr. Pitiful, as he called himself on one of his tracks. This is on blue vinyl. This would be like a later, probably a 2010s press. But you know what? This is a classic album. If you're going to get started, in fact, I think on the recent Soul Tag, I may have called this. If you're going to start someone on soul, or someone has no clue about soul, listen to this. Listen to this. Ooh, that voice. Particularly of note, of course, I've Been Loving You Too Long to Stop Now. Oh, legendary gem penned by Otis Redding, but who? Also another favorite of the channel. How about Jerry the Iceman Butler? Apparently they got together in an Atlanta hotel, had a few whiskeys, and wrote I've Been Loving You Too Long to Stop Now. Ooh, legendary track. That one, I'm sure it probably topped the R&B charts anyway. But Otis Redding really puts a stamp as basically a soul performer to absolutely watch in 65. A 60-year-old record that is a definite must-have, but is it a underrated record? No, it isn't. I mean, it would be crazy to say this is underrated. People know, but do you know? And if you don't know, why don't you have this? Now you know, and you should have this, is what I meant to say. At any rate, that's it. 5 must-have, some of them underrated, 60-year-old records from basically 1965. That's been Craig Danger. So if you're still here, like, subscribe, click on any of the links in the, you can follow me on Instagram. You can click the thanks thing if you want to support the channel and buy me a cup of coffee. Whatever you need to do, if it makes you feel good, it makes Danger feel good, because we're all about feeling good here at this channel. So at any rate, again, thanks for tuning in, and I guess I'm just going to have to see you on the next one.